Good morning, everyone. Is it still even morning? I don't even know what time it is, honestly. But I wanted to pop on and share something with you all that I shared with a client the other day. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Marci, Dr. Marci Batiste. I am the founder and executive director for 9 Seconds, which is a domestic violence prevention nonprofit. And we've got a pretty non-traditional approach to how we deal with domestic violence prevention. And we believe that it really starts with being able to educate and provide training and resources for individuals. And so a lot of my work, you hear me talking oftentimes about empowered independence. And as part of 9 Seconds, what we do is foster freedom for women. That means regaining authority over your independence, right? Taking back control of your life, essentially. And which brings me to our topic today. Sometimes people are taking trips with people, you're trying to take trips anyway, with people who just aren't fit for travel. And so a lot of times in the growth and the development process, when we begin to change, people tell you, oh, as you change, you're going to have to leave people behind, or you're going to grow apart. And in some cases that's true. And in other cases, you're not necessarily growing apart. You're just trying to take a trip with someone who's not fit for travel. They're not prepared to go where you're going. For instance, if you're trying to travel internationally and they don't have a passport, you can still travel with them. It's just going to be domestically, right? So, my client was sharing with me the other day, and in our coaching sessions every week, we always talk about wins and obstacles, right? And she was sharing with me some disappointments that she had with an individual who she thought had been a good friend. The individual, turns out, disappointed her in a number of different ways. And, the relationship was just kind of out of balance. And she's trying to, she's frustrated and stressed, and she's got a ton of stuff on her plate. My client does, but she's being redirected. Her energy is being redirected towards this stuff that's coming from this other relationship. And, we were talking about leaving people behind as we begin to grow and build our businesses and start getting into other things. And I was sharing with her that maybe she just needs to recalibrate the relationship, shift her expectations of the relationship. In other words, that just might not be a person who you have in your entrepreneurial circle. She's not fit to move in that world. Like, that's just not her space. But she's maybe still a good friend in other ways. And so you can retain a relationship. You just need to recalibrate what you expect out of that relationship. Growing and going without them doesn't necessarily mean that you're leaving people behind. And I think that's a big part of what scares people from taking changes and making changes and stepping outside of their comfort zone, is because they fear that they're going to essentially leave all these important relationships behind them, because they're growing and going, and the other people are staying where they started, right? Or they're staying in the same space. Just because you go and grow, it doesn't mean you're leaving them behind. It means you need to recalibrate your expectation for what that relationship is going to look like going forward. Let me give you an example of what I mean by this. Because especially personal relationships, familial relationships, dealing with your family, when you start to grow, when you start to change, and you start making different moves, and you start talking different and having, new people in your life and new friends in your life, then they can get a little bit like, oh, she thinks she's this, or oh, he thinks he's that. And no, I don't think I'm anything. You're like, I'm the same person I've always been. You are, but you aren't. You see, you're the same person at your core, but now you're having different ideas and different thoughts, and you're beginning to experience new things that they can't relate to. So the things that you all used to relate on, those things maybe have changed now, because maybe you're not spending as much time doing those types of things. You're maybe doing other things, and they have no frame of reference for that. So they're just not meant to be in that space for you. They're not fit for travel to that area. But certainly you can hold on to the relationship if you recalibrate what it looks like and how you're in relation with one another. So let me give you an example. A few years ago, I wanted to take my mom to Hawaii, and she doesn't like airplanes. Let me just say that. But I didn't realize how much she didn't like airplanes. Like, I knew I'd heard her say, like, oh, I don't want to fly. I'm scared to fly. Da, 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 da. But I'm like, an all expense paid to Hawaii. Like, who wouldn't do that, right? And so I want to take my mom to Hawaii, and I say to her, hey, if I book your flight, hey, good morning, Debbie. If I book your flight, I take care of everything. I want to take you and the girls, and let's all go to Hawaii. She was like, I'm not going to Hawaii. I'm like, what do you mean you're not going? Like, you don't have to pay for anything. I'll take care of it. She's like, I don't like to fly. But it's all paid for. Like, why wouldn't you? Like, you've never been to Hawaii before. This will be an amazing experience with your daughter, your granddaughters. Like, when are we ever going to be able to do this? And she's just like, I'm not going. I don't like to fly. And I definitely don't want to fly over water. So because I decide I want to go to Hawaii and I want to have that experience, so I'm going to expand my experiences, and I'm going to go do this. Just because I grow and go doesn't mean I leave her behind as my mother. She's still my mother. She just wasn't fit for travel on that trip. Hawaii wasn't her jam. Matter of fact, anywhere that requires an airplane is not her jam. So she very seldom even comes to see me in Arizona. I usually go home because, you know, she's up there in years now. So she don't want to drive, 2 days to get here. That's not her thing. She's not fit for travel. That doesn't mean I love her any less. That doesn't mean that she's no longer my mother. That doesn't mean that, I think any less of her or that I'm better than her. But what it means is, if I've taken a trip to Hawaii without her, when I come back from Hawaii, even if I share with her information about my trip, my expectation for our conversation is going to be different with her than it's going to be with somebody who's been to Hawaii. Does that make sense? Like, I'm growing, I'm changing, I'm getting new experiences. I wanted to take her along with me. I wanted her, like, I'm going to pay for it. She didn't like to fly, so she's not going to Hawaii. And that's what we have to understand about relationships. When we're doing personal development, we're doing professional development, and we're starting to move in different circles, and we're going different places, and we're experiencing different things, and hey Anthony, we're checking all out new kinds of things. Because we've done that, it doesn't mean that the people that we engaged with and related with in the beginning are no longer our people. They still are. It just means that there's some of those new experiences that you're having that you're not gonna, you can tell them about it, but to expect an engaging conversation that's going to be thought-provoking about the new widget that they know nothing about, they're not going to be able to have that conversation with you. You need to go have that conversation with somebody who's interested in the same widgets that you're interested in, who sells the same thing, who does the same thing. That's why it's so important as entrepreneurs to have an entrepreneur circle around you, because your family and your friends aren't going to necessarily get it. They're like, what do you mean you're not going to go to the party? I'll cover you. I got you, girl. Come on, just go. And you're just like, no, I got to stay here and I got to do this because I got this, and this going on. It doesn't mean I'm not your friend. It doesn't mean I'm growing without you. It doesn't mean that I can't take you with me, but I do have to recalibrate my expectation for the relationship, or I'm going to feel like I'm leaving you behind. And I have to be able to communicate that with you, that to help you to understand that, hey, just because I'm doing this, like, girl, we still good. We're still homies. Like, you're my ace. Like, you ain't never going nowhere. We always gonna be tight. But you have to communicate that, because what happens, like with my client, unbeknownst to her, because she's like, I'm just doing what I've always done. But what her friend was internalizing was that she was leaving her behind, and that her friend felt like she could no longer relate. It had nothing to do with my client. My client literally was doing what she'd always done, but she was starting to see this separation. And sometimes that's all it is, guys. It's just a matter of recalibrating the expectation. I knew once I offered my mom that free trip to Hawaii and she said no, I don't need to offer her any more trips that involve air travel because she's not going to go. That doesn't make her a bad person. That doesn't mean our relationship is jacked up. It doesn't mean anything other than she's not fit for travel. And sometimes we're busy trying to make people feel included in our experiences who, like with my mom, they're not even interested in where you're going, let alone being fit for travel. And so we're trying to drag them along kicking and screaming because we think the experience is amazing. And they're like, I don't want to go there. That's not my thing. That's not my jam. And so I wanted to share this with you guys because I know as we begin to move into the new year, that's, especially like entrepreneurs and creatives and things like that, everyone's thinking about what their 2022 is. Yeah, complaining all the way, for real. Everybody's looking at what their 2022 is going to look like. And you have to understand that even if you all remain in relation with one another as friends, as family, as lovers, as spouses, whatever the relationship looks like, however you've categorized that relationship, their 2022 is going to be different than yours, but it doesn't mean that you can't be friends. It doesn't mean that you're not family anymore. It doesn't mean that you can't be lovers and intimate partners and all these things. You can be all of those things, but you have to recalibrate the expectations on both of your parts. And so don't be afraid to experience your 2022 how you want to experience your 2022. But don't try and drag other people who that's not their jam. That's not their vibe. That's not where they're going. That's not what they're into. That's not what they want. Don't try and drag them with you and then be pissed off because they don't want to come. Because at first, honestly, like I was a little bit butthurt. Like, my mom don't want to go to Hawaii. I'm paying for it. And this is an opportunity for you to spend time with me and your granddaughters and be on this amazing island. And I was a little bit butthurt. Got my face cracked a little bit. That's what my bestie always says. You always got your face cracked. My face was cracked. It didn't mean she didn't love me. It didn't mean she didn't want to, invest time with me or her granddaughters. It meant she don't want to get on no damn airplane. And even if that meant going to some beautiful island, she was not interested. That wasn't her thing. That was my thing. That was the experience I wanted to have and I wanted to provide. And that's what I wanted to do. It was my idea, my experience. And I tried to drag her along and she was like, I'm not going. Oh. And it took me a minute to dial it back and say, you know what? You're trying to take something personal that ain't personal. That she don't want to fly. That's her prerogative. But does that mean that because somebody else doesn't go, that you shouldn't go? No. Does that mean because they don't go and you do, that y'all are not friends anymore? You're not family anymore? That's not your parent? It's not your person? No. It means that you're going to have a different experience than they have. And you know what? Honestly, if we all walked side by side, holding hands through life together, we're still going to have different experiences because we come into each experience with our own backgrounds. So just because somebody doesn't want to travel a certain road with you on the exact same path as you're going, you can still hold on to those relationships. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about your 2022 goals and beyond. Don't dial your dreams back because somebody else isn't fit to travel with you. You can still hold on to those relationships. You just have to recalibrate the expectation for both of you and redefine, what does this look like now? And then as you begin to go into these new things and experience these new places and meet these new people, have those conversations about that with them. But your other person over here, whatever y'all had is still there. But if you go and grow and you recalibrate your expectations, but you don't communicate that with them, they're going to feel like my client's friend felt like they're being left behind, which was not her intention. That wasn't even on her radar. But because, exactly, boundaries, that's boundaries and communication, all about it, exactly. But you have to be willing to have those conversations. You have to even be thinking about it, because that was the thing here. Like when we were talking about the obstacles and she's telling me her scenario, I was just like, you're giving that a lot of energy. And you've got this, and this going on in the next 12 to 18 months. There's not room for that energy, that much energy, to be placed being concerned because you're trying to travel with somebody who's not fit. You can't take that trip with her. She can't take that trip with you. But it doesn't make you not friends anymore unless you decide that you want to move beyond that relationship for whatever reason. But that's a whole other video. This is what we're talking about today, is the ones that you want to retain, but you're afraid sometimes. Sometimes being afraid that we're going to leave people behind keeps us from going and growing. We're like, you know what? Ooh, especially with significant others and spouses, you know, we're so intertwined in how they think and how they feel. And, you know, am I being inclusive? Especially as a woman, we want to bring them in to our world and we want to provide all this stuff. But sometimes the things we're into, they're not into. It's like when dudes watch football, if you're not into football, it's going to make you crazy. You don't want to watch football. That's not your jam. It's not your thing. Let me see. What was the comment? Debbie, how would you facilitate the conversation when it's about the person not being able to financially afford the things you do? Good question. So she's asking, how do you begin to have that conversation when the person is just not financially able? It's not that they don't want to have those trips and those experiences with you. They just can't afford it. It's not in their budget. Making them understand that, you know, having a conversation that sounds something like, hey, you know, I saw this and I think I'm gonna check it out. It looks like it's gonna be a blast. I don't know what your budget looks like. If you want to come, I'd love to have you. And then you're leaving it open for them to come, and you're saying you're welcome to come along, but there's no pressure. And depending on how tight your relationship is, how much you know about their finances and their budget, you can even take it a step further and be like, hey, I know things are kind of tight. So I'm getting ready to go do this. Like, if you can make it happen, like, let's rock. But I just don't want you to feel some type of way if I go without you. And just be really honest about it. Because especially in a relationship or friendship that you know the intimate details about their finances, then it's easy to just be that blunt and that direct. Like, hey, I know stuff's been tight for you. Hey, I know you just lost your job. I don't really want to go without you. I would love for you to come, but don't feel like there's pressure for you to come. Cause you want them to understand, like, I'll take lots of pictures. I can't wait to tell you all about it. If you can't make it, girl, I can't wait to tell you all about it. And even then, you know, maybe when you're on the trip, depending on what the circumstance is, you know, maybe you send them a picture and be like, oh my gosh, I saw this. It made me think of you. Maybe you buy them a $2 trinket, what do you call them? A souvenir bag. Something that says you were with me in spirit, even though you were not there with me physically, can help them stay connected to your experience without actually being there. But then you have to understand that when you come back, you can tell them about your trip, but they're not going to be able to engage with you and have the same conversation with you as somebody who was either on the trip with you or someone who's already been where you've been. Even it's different than somebody who's going to go right after you. Like, oh my gosh, like you went to St. Croix. I'm going there in April. What did you see? Like, that's a different conversation than, oh my gosh, I just got back from here. Like, I want to show you. Do you want to see my pictures? Like, that's the other thing. Like, asking permission before you just show pictures to them after it's this amazing trip and they really wanted to go, but they just couldn't afford it. Be like, I took a ton of pictures. Do you want to see them? And then you'll know after this has happened a time or two if they're being genuine and authentic in saying yes, that they want to see them. Because if they start acting weird or trying to change the subject or things like that, then you know they was just saying yes because they thought that was the thing that they were supposed to say, not because they really even wanted to see your pictures. Does that make sense? So heart me up if that makes sense. But that's really all I came on to talk about today, guys. Okay, cool, Debbie. Just because I just had that conversation with a client earlier this week, and I was like, you know what? I think a lot of people find themselves in that boat where you're like, I want to go, I want to experience, but I don't want to go without them. Here's the other thing, and then I'll get off of here. The other thing is, sometimes for the seed of your soul, for all of your spirit, you need to go without them. Your soul requires you to go without them. It might be because you need to just get away and think. It might be just because you need some time for yourself. And it can also sometimes shed light on the status of the relationship that you might not even be aware of. In other words, if you decide to go on a trip and you come back and they've got this straight up hella bad attitude with you, and they're throwing off these negative vibes and everything just feels off, that tells you more about the status of the relationship than whether or not you should have taken the trip. Because sometimes we think, oh, maybe I shouldn't have gone. No. This is just the universe showing you what you needed to see about the status of the relationship and exactly where you are. Again, think it through and recalibrate it if necessary. And there will be times that you end up leaving people behind. But when you do, it's going to be because you chose to, and that was your intention to do what's right for you. Yeah, not carrying the weight of others, Debbie, is exactly right. But a lot of times that's exactly what we try and do. We try and, you know, and I call Debbie, she's like, that's one of my girls. I call her the MVP of our group, because if there's anybody who needs anything, she's always the first one. Like, where we riding? Do I need to drive? What do I need to bring? What do I need to pack? Like, she's ready to go. She's ready to ride out for whatever. But for people who are like she is, you have to understand that, like, you're the MVP because that's how you are. MVPs are original. MVPs are outside of the ordinary. And so you can't expect that everybody in your circle is going to be an MVP. They're not. But if that's who you are, and you're the MVP and you're the one, and if your budget allows it, go. Don't not experience because somebody else can't afford it or because you risk them feeling some type of way. Because the people who are for you, and I say this all the time, guys, the people who are for you will be there for you. Regardless of what you did, regardless of finance, regardless of distance, regardless of bloodlines, the people who are for you, and they will always be for you. Do you have people who are for you because of what you can do for them? Yep. And that becomes apparent when you stop doing. Do you have people who are for you, not for you, but y'all are against the same thing? Yep, you do. And then when you're no longer against that thing, all of a sudden they feel some type of way. They're, oh, you changed. Oh, you're this. Oh, you're that. No, I just got new information so I can change my opinion. And if you're, if you're somebody who's open to being able to receive new information and change your opinions, it can happen for you too. But not everybody's willing for it. Absolutely. Your people will always rise up. And everybody, and here's the thing on that too. They're going to rise to their capacity. And this was a hard lesson for me to learn. That sometimes we feel like we're given 100%. And the only other person's only given 50%. That's because we're comparing our gifting to their gifting, but we have a higher capacity. So we're at 100% of our capacity of giving. They're at 100% of their capacity of giving, but it only equates to 50% of ours. That doesn't mean they didn't give 100%. It means their capacity is different. It could be because of belief systems. It could be because of familial responsibilities. It could be because of finance. It could be because of jobs. It could be because of a whole list of things. But deciding, is the relationship worth salvaging, worth that conversation? And it's going to depend on the significance of the relationship. Is going to depend on how comfortable you are having the conversation. And sometimes they'll go all the way left. But you kind of need to know that. You don't want a whole bunch of those people who are always going to go left when shit gets hard in your inner circle anyway. Because what happens when you as the MVP need to receive? When you're no longer in a position to give for whatever reason. You might be able to give financially, but emotionally, your cup is drained. Who refills you? Who's pouring back into you? And at what level, and what is their capacity, and understanding all of those things. But you have to become intentional about doing these personal inventories and understanding the people that you have around you. Just because somebody doesn't want to go doesn't mean they don't want to go. And sometimes when somebody doesn't want to go, it means they do not want to go. But you're never going to know the difference until you have that conversation. Like, I never would have known that my mom was so terrified of planes that she'd forego a free trip to Hawaii had I not ever asked. But then I had to recalibrate my expectation and say, you know what? It's not that she don't want to, hey, Candy Cane. It's not like she doesn't want to spend time with me. It's not even like she don't want to go to Hawaii. I'm sure if we could have got to Hawaii some way besides on an airplane, she probably would have went. But she doesn't want to be on an airplane. She doesn't want to be on a cruise. I think Hawaii's probably out. That's going to be it. Oh, you got to watch the replay, Candace. Honey, when I get on here, we dive into it. You already know. But no, I was trying to take my mom on a free trip to Hawaii, and I was using that as an example of how sometimes we try to take trips with people who aren't fit for travel. And so I was just using that as an example of how you want to go somewhere and you want people to have these experiences with you. They're not fit to go the places that you're trying to go. or they don't have an interest in it, or there's some other reason. And so that's what we've really been talking about. But check out the whole replay. Debbie asked some good questions as it relates to finances and how do you have some of those conversations. We talked through that as well. So that's it for me today, guys. Keep these. Hopefully this helped somebody. Hope this blessed somebody. Hope this went in somebody's spirit so that as you're planning your 2022, you can plan for you. And plan for you, prepare for you, but understand that you don't have to not go or not grow because you're going to leave somebody behind. It could just be they're not fit for travel. It could just be, hey, Reed, it could just be that they're like my mom and they just don't want to fly. She still loves me. She still values time with me. She's just not flying. She ain't taking no cruise. So if I want to go to Hawaii, I ain't going with her. Gotta be somebody else. Okay? So that's the message today, guys. In the meantime and in between time, stay healthy, stay happy, stay blessed, and most importantly, stay safe, and I'll catch y'all next time.